Hello, my name is Michael Fine, and welcome to Envision Tech's first JavaScript lesson. I'll be using VS Code here to help you get to know all the different JavaScript types and some basics about the language. So first, we have the type number, which includes both integers and floating point numbers. So 3 is a number, where in other languages it would be an integer. And 3.14 is also a number, even though in other languages it would be a float. Now, the next one is a string. A string is any number of characters that are enclosed by single quotes or double quotes. Backticks also work, but we'll talk about that later. JavaScript is unique in the fact that even if you just have one character, it's a string. It's still a string, not a character. Some other languages will call a string of length 1 a character data type, but this doesn't work in JavaScript. Yeah, JavaScript doesn't have this. It doesn't matter the case, it'll still be a string, or the length. Now on to the next one. The Boolean data type essentially represents whether something is true or false. That's the only thing a variable of a Boolean type can be, true or false. Now, null and undefined, they both mean the absence of a value, but null is the intentional absence of a value, and undefined is the unintentional absence of a value. For example, a variable that we have declared but haven't assigned a value to would be undefined. I'll show you more about these later on. Now for more complex types, we have the object, which is an object type. This is a data structure in JavaScript that essentially acts as a dictionary, if any of you are coming from Python. This essentially stores key-value pairs. So name here is a key, and Michael Fine is a value. This is a pair. Same with age and 500. Now, arrays work exactly as they do in other languages. They store some values, they don't have to be strings, and the first value, of course, is, well, it has an index of 0. This is index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. The next type we have is the date type, which, well, it's not a type, it's an object type, but the data structure is essentially a timestamp. Now, you'll see more of this later, but I'm going to show you an actual presentation of these types. I'm going to show you that JavaScript actually recognizes these types. I've just made a boilerplate HTML file using a VS Code extension because I'm sure you know about all this. These meta tags, you don't need to worry about them. Essentially what they provide is data about data. We'll get into them later. Now, what we're actually going to do is link a JavaScript sheet. You can write JavaScript just in between these script tags, just in this HTML file, but it's best practice to write it in a separate JavaScript file. So what I'm going to do is go to this first script tag. I'm going to go src, which stands for source, and I'm going to input my JavaScript file that I made beforehand, which is this. If I save it and control click, Yeah, it recognizes the file because I just went to that file. Now let's define a variable. Let var1. So I've created a variable, and what I'm going to do is set up an alert. What this is going to do is it's going to make a pop-up right here saying something. It's best if I demonstrate it. I'll demonstrate the functionality of the alert. If I go var1, it will put the value of var1 in the alert. So if I reload the page, yeah, it says hello world. Another thing I can do is actually use the type of keyword, which will essentially return the type that variable 1 is at the moment. So it would return string. And if sorry, I didn't save that. Yeah, string. Now, let's test the fact that one character is still a string. Yeah, it is, even though some languages use characters. Now, the number data type. Yeah. And this is just to show off that this works for any number, including decimals. In fact, this also works with negatives. Even if it's all 0. It actually thinks that's a literal number. Yeah. So the next data type is actually Boolean. If I make that true, that's Boolean. If I make it false, it's Boolean. What if I were to do this? This exclamation mark in other languages can mean false. And it works the same way in JavaScript. What this is essentially doing is making this false. Whatever is between these parentheses, it becomes false. So false, if you apply false to it, becomes true. It's a bit hard to get your head around it, but it'll be explained later on. Our next data type is actually null and undefined. Now, I won't be going over null because you may not understand why you would need it, and I think it's a better idea to go over it later. But as you can see, undefined exists, and this is essentially the unintentional absence of a value. As you can see, var1 hasn't been assigned to any value. There's nothing after this, after the equal sign. In fact, there even is no equal sign, which is why it's undefined. So our next data types, well, it's one data type. It's the object type. Don't confuse the object type with the object data structure. This is actually spelled with a capital O, and this is spelled with a lowercase o. Yeah, it still says undefined. The first thing is object. I'm going to declare an object, and the first key value pair is going to be name, and I go fine, just like how I yeah, this is, oops, I'm just going to fix that later. Age 500. So, sorry. Equals yeah, you don't actually need the object there. I just wanted to get this out first. Now, this is, yeah, as you can see, an object data type, but some very interesting things you can do is reference certain values by their keys. If you reference the value associated with the key name, you would get Michael Fine, which is a string. And what if I access the value associated with the key of age? You would get number, because it's applying type of to 500 and it's getting a number. The next data structure is an array. These are actually really simple to understand. Oops. Let's say, oops. Just random gibberish, it doesn't matter. So if I reload this, it will still tell you that this is an object type. That's because all of these complex data structures, they all fall under one type. And that's the object type. With this one, you would use these little brackets to refer to an index. It would now be, this would now return a string, because if I take away type of, you'll see that I'm accessing the element at index 0, which is the first element in var1, our array. Now, our next complex in quotation marks data structure is datetime. This is declared a little differently, but this is essentially a timestamp. What you do is enter whatever date you want. 06, so I don't know, 12. Oh yeah. Semicolons are optional in this language because the compiler will do it for you. As you can see, if I print this, I get a timestamp. Now, let's see what happens if I get the type of that timestamp. You'll see that it's an object type, not a date type, because this is technically a data structure, not its own type. Remember, all of these fall under the object type, or I like to call them more complex types, but you can call them object types because that's what they are. And this has been pretty much all the basic types of JavaScript, except for one which we'll get into later. That's the symbol type, and of course the null type. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again in the next one. Goodbye.